If you have one of these, an iPhone 14 Pro, this question probably stumbled upon your mind over the last few weeks. Should I upgrade to the 16 Pro this year? The answer for 98% of people is gonna be no, you don't have anything to upgrade for. But for those 2% of you who have some extra money laying around and are really into shooting videos with their phones, then yeah, the upgrade is pretty nice. So what do you really get when you upgrade from the 14 Pro to the 16 Pro as someone who makes videos? Let's get into that, and let's start with the main feature that the 16 Pro has to offer, and that's the capture button. Or should I say the most publicized feature, because the capture button, to be honest, is mostly going to be used to just launch the camera. And I had the same idea as you when I was watching the keynote. I thought that, oh, I'm gonna launch the camera with it and I'm going to do all of these adjustments while I take my photos and all of my videos. And yeah, I'm not doing that, because when is the last time that you actually had to adjust something on the iPhone camera? I think the iPhone has just gotten so good at making your photos and videos look so good from scratch that you pretty much don't have to adjust anything. Like, the only setting that I found myself adjusting on my 14 Pro was the exposure slider. But with the brand new Photographic Styles, the overhauled ones, that's no longer the case, because now you can set a default look that, by the way, you can edit later, which is the most important part about these brand new photographic styles that you couldn't do before, and now you can just stick with that one style, and if you don't like it for some reason on one of your photos, you can just go to edit photo and get rid of that style or change it completely. So to wrap up about the brand new capture button, I have two important settings to show you that you're probably going to use. First and foremost, if you find yourself for some reason clicking this accidentally and opening your camera, there is actually a setting to either completely disable it or to change it to a double click. And then if you're like me and you're pretty much never going to use any of the adjustments, by the way, all of the adjustments are kind of ridiculous. You're never going to use any of those that Apple actually put in. Maybe in the best case scenario, you're going to use the quick camera switcher, which is actually pretty useful. But then again, most of us are just used to the on-screen controls. But I guess if you only have one hand available and you're holding the phone in a specific orientation, then yeah, it's gonna be pretty useful. And if not, you can simply disable these adjustments in the settings. I'm gonna be honest about the camera quality between these two. There's a difference between them. If you have a 14 Pro, you're never going to notice that, oh, my camera just isn't good enough. I never thought that while I had this phone, because I knew the cameras were amazing. But with the 16 Pro, as it was with the 15 Pro, you're now able to shoot 24 megapixel photos instead of 12 megapixel photos. So the sharpness is gonna be improved quite a lot. But the main change in terms of these cameras that I was super excited about was the upgrade to the ultra-wide camera, which went from 12 megapixels on the 14 and the 15 Pro to 48 megapixels now. When you're shooting photos, you're not going to notice that much of a difference, because it's still pixel bin in it down to 12 megapixels from those 48. But if you shoot in RAW, it's gonna be a lot better. But this is not the case when you're shooting video. Like, sure, your video in ProRes Apple Lock, which we will get to in a bit, is going to look amazing, but it just falls apart as soon as you don't give it enough light. But then again, it's not the worst thing that I ever seen, but I surely wouldn't include it in any kind of project for a client or anything like that. So let's quickly mention Apple Lock, and then we will go to some of the physical differences. So Apple Lock on the brand new 16 Pro and also on the 15 Pro previously was a godsend, and I was highly debating last year if I should get the 15 Pro just for the Apple Lock, but I still wanted to wait another year to get some more features as I was upgrading. And I have to say, Apple Lock is just so freaking good, because first and foremost, you're getting the properties of lock, which means that you can color grade the hell out of this footage. And secondly, which might be even more important, you're getting rid of all of that processing that Apple does to your videos. You know, that over sharpening, the saturation bump, the shadows lift, everything is left for you to tweak, which means that this is pretty much the same quality as a regular camera. Like, the only real difference between those two footages is footages like a plural of footage? I don't know, but the only real difference of those two is that one has better background blur and the other one has slightly shallower background blur. That's the only difference between those two. The sharpness and everything this footage gives you is so amazing. Now, here comes the caveat with Apple Lock. If you're recording this with the default camera app or even the Final Cut camera, then the files are going to be freaking huge. Like I'm talking 3 to 6 gigabytes a minute, because by default you're shooting in ProRes 422 HQ, which is a huge format, as I said, 3 to 6 gigabytes per minute. But if you install the Blackmagic camera app, which gives you the option to change pretty much everything around your camera, then you can change this format to H.265 or ProRes Proxy, which I use personally. Like I know that you're losing on some detail here, especially when going from HQ to Proxy, because Proxy is a lot more compressed. But then again, I'm here making videos just for this YouTube channel, and YouTube compression is pretty much going to kill all of that quality anyways, so I have nothing to worry about. So that was my little rant about Apple Lock. Hope you stayed through it. Hope the nerds are still here. Oh, and by the way, you can now record in 120 FPS at 4K, which has been just amazing. And you can also do it in Apple Lock. Like, to be honest, I'm still going to be recording in 4K 60 because 120 is a little too slow for the things that I do. But if you have a usage scenario for this and you really want to slow down that footage, then yeah, it works really well. Okay, so now let's get to the physical differences between the 14 Pro and the 16 Pro. The first thing that you're going to notice right away is that the 14 Pro is made out of stainless steel and has sharp edges, and the 16 Pro is made out of titanium and has these really nice soft edges. I personally think that the sides on the 14 Pro look much better with this glossy design that you can see all of the reflections in. But then again, it's a freaking fingerprint magnet. But with the 16 Pro having these round edges all around with this nice matte texture, I cannot see a fingerprint anywhere. And maybe it's mostly because I have the silver color this time, which just doesn't show fingerprints anywhere, which I love. So the second physical difference, and we are going to skip the capture button because we already talked about it, is the action button. And this replaces the silent switch that we had before, basically just giving it a little bit more functionality, the ability to change it to something else if you didn't use the silent button like, for example, I did. Because to be honest, I'm one of those annoying people who have their silent switch always on, so my notifications just buzz and I hear all of the phone calls, and I pretty much left it there the whole time I had the 14 Pro. But with the 16 Pro having the ability to change it, I changed it to the flash. It was pretty much the best option out there. I didn't really have anything else that I wanted to put there. I tried out like a to-do app with the button, but then again, it's quite annoying to have to hold it down, and the flash felt like the best option, especially now in iOS 18 that you can change the two little icons on your lock screen. Okay, now the change that I thought is going to make everything different about these two phones, the switch from Lightning over to USB-C. To be honest, after using an iPhone with USB-C for the last 2 weeks, I haven't noticed a difference because I still don't transfer my files by using the cable, but I simply use AirDrop. If I want to charge it, I still charge it by a cable. And yeah, I can use one cable for everything, but then again, I'm not traveling anywhere, so I don't really care about that. So the only thing that changed with the USB-C port is, again, if you're making videos, this is going to be super useful because you can now just plug in a mic with USB-C, you can plug in your SSD with a USB-C, and you can also plug in a monitor if you have a USB-C monitor. It's super cool that the iPhone now works with pretty much any USB-C accessory. Not like before where you had to get an Apple certified accessory to even work with the Lightning port. Okay, now that my voice is officially starting to give up, let's get to the last two changes that separates these two phones. And the first one that I really thought is not going to be such a huge difference is actually quite the game changer. And it's the bigger screen on the 16 Pro, because you're going from 6.1 inches over to 6.3 without pretty much any physical change whatsoever. Like when I put them side to side like this, the 16 Pro is maybe a millimeter taller, but it isn't wider or anything, but the screen itself with the thinner bezels just feels way better to use. It almost feels like using a Pro Max instead of a Pro before, which most YouTubers just didn't mention because they're always comparing the 15 Pro with the 16 Pro and just one generation apart. But when you jump at least 2 generations, you're really going to notice a difference. Now, the very last change that I wanted to mention at the very end, this surprised me massively, is actually the new microphones on the 16 Pro, because Apple said that, oh, it now has studio microphones, and I thought, okay, it's pretty much going to sound the exact same as before, but there's a huge difference between these two. So I'm going to switch to the 14 Pro now. So you're now listening to the 14 Pro's microphone, which still sounds amazing for a phone. But when I compare it to the 16 Pros, this is so much better. What do you think? At the beginning I mentioned that 98% of people are not going to notice a difference, and that you 2%, which probably watch this video till the end, are actually going to get a pretty big upgrade. Do you think I was right with that statement, or am I just a freaking liar? Also, if you got yourself a 16 Pro, I'm super interested in two things. First and foremost, which feature is the standout one for you, like the one that you upgraded for? For me, it's gotta be Apple Lock. And the second one, which color did you get? I'm super interested to know which color people got, because I feel like online there's this huge wave of people getting the natural titanium, but I really like the white one. So please leave those two things down in the description, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!